Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Welcome to this week's Killer Innovation Show. We are wrapping up the series of interviews that we did on the mobile studio, on the bus, related to the Tech Expo show in Philadelphia. Today is the last and final interview, which timing works out because now we are going to be at CES here soon and doing a whole new set of interviews at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. But today's episode is the final one from Tech Expo. Our guest today is Sandra Howe. I've known Sandra for many, many years. She and I both served on the board of directors for one organization, and Sandra has a long history of the industry. She used to be at Cisco, she was at Aris, Technetix. She's on the board for a number of smaller startup companies. Most recently, she is the board chair for WICT, WICT. If you're not familiar with it, it's Women in Cable Telecommunications. It was started in 1979, which I'm very proud of from the standpoint of our industry having had such a long history in creating organizations like WICT to support women in the industry. Sandra is finishing up her third and final term as the board chair for WICT. In today's interview, we talk about a wide range of things, but we tend to focus in on was around innovation timing, how to get the timing right, being too early, too late when introducing new technologies, and also around collaboration. Collaboration within industries, collaboration even within competitors. And so those are kind of the core two basic things, but we covered a wide range. One interesting statistic that we did talk about was semiconductors and how many semiconductors are used actually within the communications industry, broadband, voice, mobile, fixed. If you add that all up, the majority of all silicon produced is actually used in the communications industry, which I found pretty interesting. And we got into that discussion, so you're going to want to listen. And at the end of the interview, Sandy also shares a piece of advice. So if you're an innovator working on that new idea, here you have an opportunity to listen to somebody who's been around the block. She's been involved as part of advanced technology groups at leading companies. Here's her advice on what you should do, the first step you should do with that idea that you have. So you want to make sure you listen to all the way to the end. Before we hop into this week's episode, got that favor to ask: follow, like, and share. Follow us on social media, keep up with and be part of the conversation. Like the show, give us a thumbs up, give us a rating wherever you get your podcast, and share. Share it with others so others have an opportunity to hear and get the benefit of the content. As I've mentioned in the past, all of our content is now available over at theinnovators.network. Theinnovators.network. That is now not only where my content, both the podcast, my writings, articles, videos are all aggregated in one place, but also other contributors, such as Kim McNicholas, who used to be a reporter, staff reporter with Forbes magazine and Forbes Video. She's an Emmy Award-winning reporter with her video work with Forbes. So you want to check out also what Kim is doing. Her focus is on innovation in healthcare. So hop on over to innovators.network and check that out. But let's go ahead and let's hop into this week's interview with Sandra Howe. So Sandy, you've been here at the show now the whole week. I've seen you around, running. You know, everybody's been going crazy trying to go booth to booth. So what's your take of the show?
Well, it's great to be back in person, which is probably what everybody is saying.
That is the most common answer I'm hearing. Like, oh, you're in 3D. I can see you. I can hug you.
It's nice to put names and faces with people I've met just by video over this time of lockdown.
Have you had the experience of thinking you know what someone's going to look like, and then when you see them live, they're like, I didn't realize you were so tall.
Exactly.
You know?
That does happen.
Yeah. So, good show. Seeing a lot of great stuff.
It's a great show. The technology, we really, as an industry, need a hub. And very thankful to the work that Cable Labs and the SCTE are doing to create a place where we can talk about thought leadership, new technologies, share ideas, work on standards. There's so much need, as well as sharing the actual, I believe there's a lot of value in the case studies and real world. So to hear an operator that might have tried this new technology and hear what it's like, because it never quite deploys the way we think it will when we're designing the products.
Yeah, I mean, I was having a conversation. I guess it was that at the dinner after the chairman's reception, Michael Powell was sitting next to me, and Michael and I were talking. And we were talking about the secret weapon of the industry is the collaboration and the willingness to share. Now, I came in from the outside. I didn't grow my career into the cable industry. I came in as a late bloomer, albeit I've been here 10 years, but in cable years, that's still young. But it is the secret weapon. And in events like this where people come together, it doesn't matter what operator you are or what vendor you are, the willingness of the industry to be as transparent. I try to explain it to people, and they don't believe me.
Well, I also believe, again, Cable Labs has helped with that with some of the standards bodies and places that, you're right, in different standard bodies I've worked with, you don't have kind of this collegiate feel that we have. And in our industry, too, when you think about all the things we've innovated and put on this hybrid fiber coax network over the years, and I remember first talking about high-speed data, and we were like, can we really clean up the upstream plant to make it even work? And again, it's through collective work together, sharing best practices, sharing what was learned, what didn't work, what we found. That's what has made all this innovation happen, from high-speed data to voice, and now some of the things we're doing in wireless are very exciting.
Yeah, it's what I found interesting is just the sheer number of new products that came out. Obviously, because the engineers were working hard all through COVID. It wasn't like anybody was sitting around not doing anything. So I think it was a little bit of a backlog collective to get that out, which is all interesting. Plus, the number of new companies that are new to the industry that are here.
That has been exciting for me, and companies that might have been in the industry or really large in other parts of the world, very active, that now they have a presence. There are some big booths that I'm like, wow, they're really making a presence here in North America, and they're going to be successful coming in and working hand in hand on these industry standards and issues.
Yeah, it was interesting. I've been talking with a bunch of those companies, and a couple of them have been on the show, coming from Europe to the U.S. And then, part of the conversation was about the is it different? Is it the same? Hard? Easy? The common thread, though, is the openness of the industry to at least take a look at, try things.
Yes.
This is an industry that's willing to experiment. And if it doesn't work out, okay, move on, try the next thing.
Right. And sometimes in our industry, and I so believe, and I've seen this happen in all the different companies I've worked in, we come up with solutions, but we sometimes are 10 years too early. And, we do have so many great engineers and very thoughtful of what we can do with this robust network that has a lot of capabilities. And it's the network that keeps giving. And we do come out with things, and I've seen business units sadly shut down, and I'm like, there's going to be a need. I see it. But it was also so early, and it's hard for companies to keep those businesses going to make it so they're there in 10 years. But hopefully they still have a lot of that IP.
Yeah, it is a common challenge, right? Of you got to be careful about not being too far on the front edge of the leading edge, because you can you can spend a lot of money educating, but you don't get to reap the rewards.
Exactly.
Right? It's always is it always better to be maybe slightly of a fast follower? Or as we say, the difference between a good idea and a great idea is rarely the idea, it's the timing. Getting the timing aligned with the market.
It is. And I think that's also key is just the timing, but also figuring out the right partnership and the right group to work together to start small trials and prove out those trials and the successes and then even build the business cases around it.
Well, I think this points out to another uniqueness of the industry because, at least in my experience of being in here the 10 years, for instance, the what we call the mid-tier or smaller operators, the larger of the smaller operators, I guess is one way to describe them, are willing to do more trials and try more things with vendors and suppliers. Now, in most other industries, a big guy in the industry would say, well, that's a small guy, it doesn't matter. But in our industry, the big guys talk to the smaller guys and say, hey, how'd that work out for you? A lot of people would never know it, but the Wi-Fi mesh work that's now pretty much prevalent started with the mid-tier operators. They did it first, and the big guys were like, great, you guys do that and then report back, and then we'll figure it out. We won't have to do it. So a lot of the partners that the mid-tiers used to do the early Wi-Fi mesh are now the partners
that the large guys
use. And it is interesting of this because of the cooperation on the research, cooperation on deployments, the support that each other gives each other. You gain scale that you would never be able to merge up to become big enough to equal the scale that industry brings.
And you have to have those types of trials. And it is about figuring out how to scale it and also not impacting your end customer too much. You don't want to disrupt their service that they expect to be on now. I mean, broadband's almost a lifeblood for everyone. Everyone wants on the internet as fast as possible whenever they get someplace.
Well, getting on the internet and, what used to be during, daytime hours when everybody's at work and the kids are at school, if you had a little hiccup in the network or you were doing a network upgrade, okay. Now, God forbid, there's an 8-second blip, the call centers explode.
Oh, exactly.
And now all network maintenance, which could have been done during the day for residential, now is all at 2 a.m. to avoid, any customer perceived, issues with the change out. COVID changed the industry.
It did. I like the one thing that came out of COVID and having worked in video conferencing for actually at the very start of my career, it made really doing the video calling happen. Yeah. Everyone used it. Everyone quickly adopted it. We would never have had still the adoption that we have now if it wasn't the force of all of a sudden we're all secluded. We can't be together. And the only way I can see you and we could have our, NCTA board meeting is to have, by video.
Yep.
And make sure that we're compliant with our bylaws. And video, it's interesting now because I think we all have some video fatigue. But nevertheless, it is such a good way, to have some first early intros if you can't physically get there.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I would get all these phone calls early in COVID about, hey, we're playing around with, we're thinking about using this thing called Zoom. Well, Zoom's a sponsor of the show. Zoom has sponsored the show for 8 years. I was an alpha user. Eric, who's the founder at Zoom, is a friend. But you're right. I mean, when I was at HP, we created Halo, which became then went to Polycom, sold it, and then recently HP bought Polycom back to get that. And then Cisco Telepresence came after.
Well, I worked with WebEx and at Cisco, WebEx and Telepresence.
Oh, so then when Eric was the VP of engineering for WebEx for many years. So I had the Halo group reporting to me, and then it got sold to Polycom. And you remember those back in those days, and to build a room.
And people didn't even want to use it always, too. It was like, but yes,
it was interesting.
And paint the room the right color.
Well, in our case, Halo was part of a collaborative co-innovation work with DreamWorks Studios. So DreamWorks Studios actually designed the Halo rooms. So if you ever walked into a Halo room, the outside walls actually slope in to give you the 3D optical effect. The ceiling actually sloped down. The lighting color was very specific. The distance from the last chair to the back wall. I mean, it's a soundstage. You're basically on a soundstage, which made for an amazing experience. But one of the things you talk about, like social engineering, one of the interesting things that we did on Halo that you don't see in any other system, and I actually think it might not be a bad date to bring it back, which was we never show an image of the room, your room. So you never can see yourself on a screen.
Yes.
Versus you find, like, even in a Zoom room, people they got 12 people in a room, they're focusing on their square. If you follow their eye tracking, they tend to be looking at themselves versus everybody else. And people notice it, the eye gaze. It's another kind of social engineering piece of, and again, you talk about fatigue. How much time do you spend on it? And it's interesting to see what people did in the early days of Zoom to the later days of Zoom. People would, not turn their camera on, whatever.
Yep.
Now they turn the camera on and their hair's sticking out, and they're like, I don't care, I'm on Zoom.
That's why I'm staring at my video sometimes. I'm like, oh no. And you're right when you think about the large systems that we used to use, and telepresence, we would dictate size of the rooms to the customers to make the best experience possible, very much like the Halo solution. The color of the paint, we did all this research on what color made people look the best in the room, so you had 3 colors to pick from. And I just remember going, oh my gosh, for facilities, this is a lot of work. And again, that's where technology, it constantly leapfrogs. It goes beyond, and we now have Zoom. And I was also shocked during COVID, my mother, that's 80 years old, was Zooming to church. But I was so shocked. She figured it all out, and she just went and did it. And that's, again, that huge adoption. And when you're bringing new products to market, it's about figuring out how to get high adoption quickly. And that's when you have real success. And that's also why they've been successful. Well,
yeah, Zoom, I think Eric and his team did a phenomenal job of getting what I refer to as grandma simple. Mm-hmm. Is it grandma simple? If my wife can do it, then you've achieved the grandma simple, and you will get broad adoption.
Right.
Any kind of there is always this technology intimidation factor for the average consumer. At HP, we would refer to it when coming up with a new product is, will it play in Iowa?
Yes.
It doesn't matter whether it plays in Silicon Valley or plays in Austin or Boston or New York. Will it play in Iowa? Because if it plays in Iowa, then you got a great product. If you need some special expertise, not a good fit.
Well, I led for a while the global products for retail at Aris, and so that was all the modems and the routers and then some of the mesh products, and it has to be easy. Yep. And so that's the key piece. Is it, like you said, is it going to work in Iowa? It has to be so easy that insightful, you aren't questioning. And then, from years of working with the operators on these install kits, and I remember working on the first DVRs, and we thought customers are never going to be able to install a DVR back in the day. And we figured it out. Again, from that kind of collegial experience, I rode in a lot of trucks to learn how to make that easier from the, product side, but you have to have it easy.
Well, I think the example you're giving is another one that I think as a result of COVID, if you looked at the rate of self-installs that just shot through the roof, and back to the collegial, some of the players who were pretty far down the line, like Shaw and others that had done a lot of prep work, they basically went to the other operators and said, here's the step-by-step, here's how we do it, here's what we tell our drivers, here's how our facility centers operate, this is the actual materials we stuff in the box when we ship it, and they give it away to everybody. to help, because it was all, as Michael Powell says, it was all hands on deck for COVID. And this was, what do you call it? Our Winston Churchill moment. It's our, finest hour. Better, we gotta do what's right. And, but you look at like the self installs, people who never thought they would be able to like hook up, they look at a modem. The word modem freaks them out,
Well, again, it's kind of that mass adoption of Zoom. One, I also know from a business side, as much as the operators wanted to have self-install, not all of them were comfortable with certain services being self-installed. So it was a blend of that. All of a sudden now, people need more broadband in their home, or they're signing up for broadband because using their cell phone's not going to cut it when, mom and dad are home working and the kids are going to school at the same time. And they don't want you to come into the house to add the broadband because you might be contagious. So it was just, as you said, a perfect storm to force. Now I think the majority of the operators all want to be self-install as much as possible. Everything's being looked at that way. And then people are so more willing now to try it.
Right. And
that is what happened with Zoom. And again, it goes back to, it has to be easy. It has to, as you said, Shaw helped with the right code. I know I've seen different kits with like color coding and, 1, 2, here's
3,
what you
right,
go
you
connect in what order. And it has to be that way. It has to be simple.
Well, it's like at HP, if you ever open up an HP printer, it's always this simplified graphic for the setup. And it may be like a fold out, and it's 1, 2, 3, and it's drawings. You don't have to read. You can, I take that phone, plug that in there. I plug that into the wall.
Now I plug it into the, exactly.
And then, but, from your perspective, I mean, one of the challenges that I see with a lot of innovation, though, is the engineers get all excited about solving really complex problems. But then you're on the other side saying, okay, that's great, but then you got to make it simple. There's always this little friction.
And I also think, too, with innovation, you have to figure out the business case and the financial drivers, whether it's saving in OpEx or creating new revenue.
The technology's cool.
And there's so much cool technology, and again, some of it before time.
Yeah.
But we're ready. But, over the years, having worked on like advanced technology teams and with so many of the great CTOs in our industry, you have to, just a great idea until you can help make it a product and figure out what that business model is. It's the business model that's going to drive a lot of the mass deployment, and then keeping in mind how to make it as simple and easy, and it has to just work.
Well, part of this is it has to be also allow for a healthy ecosystem. And and this is we've had this conversation in the industry for a while, and I come from an industry in the PC world where it's not a healthy ecosystem. 94% of the margin is held by 2 players in the industry, and everybody else is battling over the other 6% of the margin left out of the entire value chain, right? And the 6%, that's the people who have the brand in front of the customers, are fighting over the 6% margin.
Right.
Right. And so therefore you lose vendors. Vendors don't have enough to survive on. How do you make that? So you talk about the business case of innovation. How do you think about that in the context of it? Because like you were at Aris, so you've got suppliers to Aris. We need to keep the silicon suppliers viable and value. Aris, now CommScope in their play, and then you got the MSOs, but the MSOs eventually have to build a network that they can then provide, sell, take revenue in with enough margin to then pay CommScope Aris, that then CommScope pays the component. I mean, it's a complex ecosystem problem.
Well, and I've spent a lot of time through COVID on supply chain. I've worked on the Chipset Act. I'm very passionate about having dual sourcing as much as possible, especially in silicon. That's, so much of, and in, our space, depending on the device, it can be the majority of your bill of material to build that device. So silicon is a big swing in your cost. And you have to have two players, in my opinion. And also we have to, as an industry, also think how we're positioned against other industries that now need more silicon. Like everyone's hearing about the automotive industry, but they don't realize our industry, the telecom industry, uses about 60% of all the silicon, whether it's wired, wireless, or the device in everyone's hand. Mm-hmm. And automotive at this point is using about 17%. And, but all you hear about on the news is the 17% of the cars that can't get their parts. And
yeah, but it's a great video shot of this big parking lot of trucks that can't be sold because they're missing a chip.
But think about it. Through COVID, we needed connectivity.
Yep.
And it was this industry that stepped up. Our networks saw almost twice as much traffic in any one year added to it.
Yep.
And on a whole, most part, I was really proud of all the designs because I was like, wow, they're surviving with more load than we thought ever on this current design.
I remember that first week we did 7 a.m. calls with every CTO around the world at 7 a.m. for the first almost 2.5 weeks until we were sure that everything was stable and the network performed fantastic. I mean, it was. I wouldn't say we were surprised.
We knew we had overhead, but not that much overhead.
Well, basically, as you know, broadband networks are typically built with 2-year capacity plans. So you're building for 2 years. We ate 2 years of capacity in 10 days. So in 10 days, with everybody coming home, and then the students starting to try to figure it out. We had a little bit of a blip in the first couple of days, but by day 10, day 11, day 12, after the shutdown in the U.S., we'd eaten up, and then it pretty much stayed. Or as we say, peak time in the broadband network is Sunday night.
Right.
Right. That's the big night. That's when
everyone's home.
Everybody's home. Everybody's streaming Netflix or whatever. So the joke we started saying is every day is Sunday. Because that was where we were at. We just went and then just stayed.
Well, the other thing in the United States, we should be very proud of. There are places in the world that did have some initial outages, and they couldn't handle the capacity. Again, the great thing about the way our network's designed is it's relatively, in some cases, it was easy to do some upgrades and get them back in line with where the network had to be. And we, in the United States, we kept our service going.
Yep.
And it was a lifeblood to all of us. If we were all home Zooming, it was our only way to the outside world for the longest. We were all, I'm sure, watching the news and whatever they had to say next about, how you were going to get COVID and how to keep away from it. It was a very interesting time with so much demand on the network and the resiliency of it, and very, very proud of our industry for what DOCSIS, how it held up and how we thought the overhead of the network was designed.
Well, and again, I also emphasize the collaboration because then, we had the Friday call. So every Friday for a year, every Friday, 7 a.m., every CTO was on the call along with their heads of network engineering. And then people we'd be going through the report out before NCTA posted the numbers. So we were transparent. We posted every performance in the United States is by every state. And then countries started doing it. We were helping the Canadians. We helped the Europeans post their information. But what it is like you said, okay, we've got a congestion in Northern California. What's the issue? And then, we had a couple situations where someone needed a piece of equipment but couldn't because of all of a sudden couldn't get
we aren't getting any boats in.
Couldn't get any boats in from China. So completely other members would say, okay, I've got that in my warehouse. I'll get it. I'll have it shipped. You'll have it first thing. We'll do overnight directly to you. So they were helping each other. Like, okay, we got to go solve an LA problem. We've got to Seattle issue. We got a Chicago
It was
issue.
amazing what got dusted off in some warehouses too. And
It
it
wasn't
wasn't
it?
necessarily the most cutting edge, but it worked. And again, it was great engineering minds that would think, oh, we could do this and, repurpose.
And the nice thing about the network is the backward compatibility. So you could take a DOCSIS 3.0 and stick a device into the network if you needed to.
Exactly.
Well, there's a couple DOCSIS 2 things going on.
I was going to say, I think there were some DOCSIS 2 being deployed.
Right. Yeah. For some
Or
consumers.
redeployed that were in a warehouse, right?
Right. They were DOCSIS 2 modems that nobody ever thought they would ever use again. But you're selling to customers who never had broadband and all they needed was 100 megabits. You can get that on DOCSIS 2 and it's backward compatible. So zip them a DOCSIS 2 modem when you can't get anything else.
We had some of those in our warehouses.
And again, I think this gets back to a little bit of the planning and talk a little bit about. I mean, you've been in the industry for a long time, but you've also been everything from a advanced technology group and then running the leadership role. When you think about innovations like that, planning for that, for the what ifs, what could happen. How do you plan for those kinds of things when you're thinking about, products and serving customers and customers being the MSOs and then ultimately them serving the end users?
Well, I go back to there's still so much to you've got to plan and test in the field. And every product I've ever worked on, how we thought it was going to work on paper and design, once you go deploy it, there's always adjustments. And that's where you really kind of learn what you have to do. So again, it's getting these you have to have these trials and testing period to kind of work out things, because as much as you think about all this backward compatibility and you're always thinking, well, this is going to work, it doesn't always work like you plan when you start to design a product.
Exactly. It's one of the reasons why it's always, I enjoy observing the interoperability testings that happen at CableLabs in Colorado. When you got vendors shoulder to shoulder, but they're willing to work together. Vendor A, CMTS, plugging into vendor B, modem. Hey, it's not working. Okay, well, why? Let's get the scope out. Let's figure out. No, you're supposed to be sending this. No, you're supposed to be acknowledging with that. And then let's work it out. And they make it work. And then, then it takes a little bit of heat, but reality is when you're doing those field trials.
Yes.
You think you got it in the lab, pristine environment, go stick it in a pedestal someplace and see how it operates.
And find out a squirrel chewed on the coax somewhere. So,
well, I don't know if you weren't at Showcase, the Tenji Showcase this year, but I think it was Charter. They had set up a demonstration with an HFC infrastructure. So we had all these big coils of coax, right? And then inside of CableLabs, we had this squirrel figurine, and they stuck the figurine of this squirrel facing right into the coax. For those of you listening, if you want to hear about squirrels and coax, I'll invite Tom Williams in on the call, and he'll give you all the funny all the funny stories of Varman who for some reason love the coating on coax cables
to sharpen their teeth.
Yeah, it sharpens their teeth, and so it turned out we did a very good design of creating coax that particularly squirrels really enjoy. So,
but it is that real world that until you get it, and to get it to scale, as anything is, you have to try it and adjust and adapt. And it's the persistence to keep going through and adjusting and adapting. Yep.
So as we wrap up this episode, what's the one piece of advice you would give to an innovator that maybe has an idea, has got that spark? How do they move that forward?
Well, one thing I've always found is when you ask, if you have friends that are in the industry you're in and you ask, could I have some advice from you, Phil? I'd like your advice on something. I don't think you would ever say no.
Nope.
And so that's a very powerful to know you can get advice, because it is good to hear from other inputs. And then from that advice, you can then start working. Could this be a product? Could this be a solution? Because it's not always a solution. Being innovative and innovation's not always resulting in a product or solution. It can be how you go to market on something.
Yep.
And, it's always listening, I find, to your end consumers and hearing what they have to say and adjusting. And it's, at the end of the day, there's a lot of persistence. And you've got to understand the value that you're bringing. And again, if it's a new product that we've worked on so many, as we are working on DOCSIS 4.0 right now, what's the business case? How much can the device cost? That it doesn't necessarily fit in the model if a device is, 3 times what's being deployed today.
Yeah, exactly. Great advice. Sandy, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Well, thank you. It's great to see you and be on the bus.
I don't know about you, but that statistic that Sandy shared, about 60% of all silicon goes to telecom. That includes both voice and data. 60. Only 17% of silicon goes to automotive, yet it gets all the press. And which begs the question around supply chain dependencies, the need for continued innovation in that space, and the role that the semiconductor industry plays in ensuring that we all stay connected and that we all are available and able to work, live, learn, and play wherever it is we choose to live and operate from. Hopefully you got a lot out of Sandy's comments. And again, this is the final interview from the Philadelphia Tech Expo show. The next show is October of 23 in Denver in October. You can check that out. You can just look for Tech Expo, Denver, October 2023. And I would encourage you, if you have anything to do in the broadband communications, mobile industry, you do not want to miss Tech Expo in 23 in Denver. And we plan to be there again, yes, with the mobile studio, with the bus, doing more interviews. In the meantime, we will be at the Consumer Electronics Show, January of 23. About the time that this show goes live, we will be in Las Vegas recording a new set of interviews. So you want to stay tuned, talking to thought leaders in the consumer electronics industry from Las Vegas. In the meantime, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be part of the show, listening in, and we appreciate all the feedback, comments that we're getting in via email. If you've got thoughts or comments you would like for us to know about, your feedback on the show, topics you would like covered, questions you would like to have answered, just drop us a note. You can do that over at theinnovators.network. You can also do it over at philmckinney.com. Or you can just send me an email, phil@killerinnovations.com. And with that, thanks again. Do not let the innovation antibodies get you down. Get out there, take that idea you're working on, make it real, and change the world. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.